All right, morning, evening, afternoon, after night, whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with my good friend Chris, who I just met yesterday. But, as they say, birds of a feather sometimes start to flock to you, whatever. Chris is here. He's been a wonderful conversationalist piece. I've so much enjoyed having. We have slightly differing beliefs, but generally overall we're in the same thing. It just maybe perhaps how we articulate it is a little bit
the same
different.
underlying
Yeah,
truths.
our languages are slightly different, but we're saying the same thing.
And that's the important part. Remember that regardless of the words, don't let terms trip you up. Try to understand the underlying truth, because we can all describe the same thing 1,000 ways, but the same truth is true.
The same truth is true. So like we were talking a little bit earlier, had a conversation that some people like to use the term demons. I prefer the terms like attachments or viruses or thought forms or faulty programming, just because I don't like the association with the word demons, just because it automatically conjures up, the devils with pitchforks
triggers,
and the pre-programmed triggers. So I don't like to use that word so much, but it's still a good word, just as long as the person's able to wrap their head around what we mean by it. But Chris and I today are going to be talking basically a little bit about targeting, trauma, programming, triggers, and this conversation we haven't planned it out at all. We're just going to kind of let this happen organically, see what comes up, because the second we get talking, it pretty much just turns into a lot of tangents, so we're just going to let it go. But Chris is going to start us off with basically a little bit of his story, who he is, and I'm going to get up to speed probably for the first time a little bit too on this and see what kind of parallels we can get into and see if we can jump back on track after we go on to our tangents.
That's right. Okay. So I guess to simplify...
Scoot it up a little bit more here. Come on up. This is our friendly microphone. There we go.
Right. And to try to keep it simple, it's complex. Everything's complex.
Always. Simplistic complexity is always the best way to...
Right. So I guess I started out young, just completely lost. And I got into drugs, the drug realm. I wasn't dumb. I dropped out of school when I was 15. I got my GED before I was 16, had college-level reading, writing, very intelligent, just school was boring. Got into drugs, ended up in that drug realm. So I was off the chain very young. And
massive alcoholic over here, so I can't say that my consciousness has been 100% pure in every way either, outside of the alcohol, so I plead the fifth, right. But I also can't say I'm innocent.
And I'm glad. It took every single thing I've been through to get me where I am, and it was just the required steps. So I'm thankful for that I can see it that way, because that's the thing that keeps it from being unnecessary trauma that hurts me now.
Yeah, that basically leaves that unresolved trauma of, oh God, I was an addict and it ruined my entire life, even though I'm fine now. But it sets the stage of saying we are presented challenges so that we can overcome them and say, well, what were they for? It's not that you were wrong. I mean, maybe it wasn't the best choices you could make, but it's there to teach you something. And especially when you look at it that way, because I have a lot of friends they've been through a lot of the drugs and the alcohol and the addictions and everything else, and I'm not perfect still. I'm not trying to paint that picture, but they serve a purpose if you let them and look at it from that understanding of saying, when all these mistakes that I made taught me something.
Exactly.
So
that's beautiful.
Everybody out there, if you still are an addict or if you were, just let it teach you something and don't identify with it. Don't hold on to it. And don't let the guilt go. Just saying, yeah, listen, I did a bunch of bad shit in the past.
Yeah. We can't change anything before yesterday. We can't change tomorrow. All we can do right now is, based upon the things that have happened, use that to make good decisions today, to accomplish the things needed to be done today, and to make sure we don't do dumb things tomorrow. I mean, it's that simple. Anxiety is worrying about the future. We can't fix it.
It's
Depression, stuck in the past.
Yep.
We're here, and it moves one direction.
Anxiety is like praying for things you don't want. Right. So what worrying and anxiety is, be like, well, I'm just going to pray for stuff I don't want today by worrying about shit I can't control.
Right. So I guess from within that realm, I'm going to keep this real short and sweet. So I started selling drugs. Pot, meth, everything.
We got to talk later once everyone's gone, then.
Yeah, never shot up or anything. But long story short, it turns out that my connection was a lot greater and different than the structure in place, so to speak. And I was young and dumb and had no clue about reality. But the important detail is that I got in trouble once, and ever since I got in trouble, a crazy string of things started happening, and I had people telling me that people wanted my connection, and they're like warning me about things I had no clue. People were disappearing, like just wild stuff. And at one point, so I went to prison. I went to prison for 5 years, 4 years, 2 months. I got caught with an unloaded gun and a small amount of possession. And the first time that I got in trouble, thinking I was funny and on drugs, and just dumb stuff, I'm sitting down with this cop, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? I told this DEA agent, I made up names of people around me. Like, I said that they were the people I was getting, like, just weird, like, jumbled information.
Yep.
And, it is what it is. I can't change it. It was dumb. But the part that rocked me and changed everything was I said, but they have dirty cops. You'd never catch them. And this look on his face was unbelievable. And I knew right then, it was like, I felt it inside me, it was just like, boom. I just
I'm
knew.
Screwed.
Well, ever since, that was the thing that began my targeting. And ever since, I started noticing strange things that I was warned about, the people that warned me, stop being around, just a lot of crazy things. I started seeing an orchestrator behind the scenes. I just started seeing this dual structure. And I won't get into every detail of all of that thing, because that thing isn't... People can't understand it by the details. Yeah. They'll see the reflections of it in the things that life presents you. Yeah. But for me, there was an unseen thing that controlled a lot of things, this structure. And some people call it Illumina, whatever. That's not as important.
If I'm not mistaken at the time too, I'm assuming you were single, no kids.
Right.
So a lot of times, single male, with not a great connection to family, and no, significant relationships and other things are many times they're prime targets to be able to manipulate into a lot of different ways to say, we're going to, number one, ruin your life. But then number two, basically use the drinking and the drugs and the hookers and the alcohol and all the other things to basically get you into crappy situations that's kind of where we even find like false flag individuals that get, set up for those things they're basically just painted as the scapegoat because they don't have anyone connected to them. So they're just like, well, we can say whatever we want happened to you, and we put you on enough psychiatric drugs that you look like you're crazy. So these are things that, this is just a reality. We're not doom and glooming anybody, but just...
Yeah, the whole point is information. See, we need to make decisions, and we make decisions based upon information and experience.
Yep.
We've had bad information, we've had bad experience. We need to undo that. And to make better decisions in the future, the more information, the better. So never let the information cause harm, but it just helps us make better decisions now.
Mistakes are information. You can learn from them. It's fine.
And we learn the most from mistakes.
Oh, especially if you let yourself.
Yeah, that is the key.
What is it? The quote is something around, you'll learn way more from your mistakes when you're not busy denying them.
Yeah.
Just saying, I messed it up. Okay, what do I do? Anyway.
Yeah.
Moving along.
So that started a crazy process, and I started just seeing all of these wild things around me, and came to find out that there actually was a network of people. There actually, that person actually was a dirty DA. This was an empire there. And because of that targeting came, and for me to say that, they thought I understood that. They thought I was actively exposing and speaking against this thing. So it's just this weird jumbled mess of, and that was the root of it was, okay, I lied, but it opened this huge door. That was the thing I had to see through it, but God used it and showed me a lot of truth through it. So I started seeing a lot of this structure, and people came in and to help influence my decisions and my path, trying to condition me to do things through friends, keep your friends close, enemies closer. And I started to see how the structure works, that even within the world, we see all these different boxes. And a lot of the boxes we see aren't there, and the boxes that we don't see are the important ones, because dealer, the top dealer was best friends with the top DEA, was best friends with the, so it was this weird...
Whole Al Capone story, basically. Like,
Yeah,
that's how this propagates, is they've got... And the government loves to give protection to drug dealers. Like, as much as they say they're fighting it, be like, they are actively
the
given...
illusion, yeah.
They are actively given protection all the time, and they're like... What was it? You take a look at the Fast and Furious scandal, where our government was literally giving thousands and thousands of guns to the Mexican cartel, and then they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and nobody actually went to prison that was responsible for giving all these drug lords guns from our government. But these second verse, same as the first.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In God we trust. Guns, oil, and drugs.
Right.
That's what anyway.
Yep. So that process, it pretty much, that shift, that started the at first, that first layer of targeting was just the seeing this thing close in around me. And everything is a mirror, physical, spiritual. There are mirrors. So the physical thing, it has the spiritual root where I was off to begin with. That caused the manifestation of the physical reaction. Everything is action, reaction, cause, effect.
Internal toxicity gets represented
External
as
actions, yes.
external circumstances which are toxic.
Yep. So really our environment is a result of how right or wrong we are
Here,
inside.
Comes out this way.
And that's the only thing we can change. So it takes that suffering and stuff to highlight it.
Yep, sometimes you got to go through it. I mean, growth is painful.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So,
and that's the important piece of that part. So I end up going to prison, and immediately I had already had an encounter with God, but I wasn't indoctrinated in church. Or, I feel like that was a huge blessing for me. And so I could read the word and interpret it myself. So I did get a different foundation outside of, just a person speaking and just
I was very much in the religion brainwashing of don't dare question a single thing, or you're going to hell for forever if you dare believe anything that other than what your pastor in this particular church told you, and then a different pastor in a different church says a different one. And then you're going to hell.
It's its own trauma.
It's
its own trauma and triggers.
It's its own trauma and triggers.
And trauma and triggers, they all have the root from the enemy. There's just the opposition. And the enemy, you can look at it outside, spiritual, whatever. It has no authority. It has no access point in our life unless there is something off. We give any demonic attachment and stuff, it has a legal right. There's some reason, causation, and the best thing we can do is remove that legal right by making ourselves clean and pure.
Making better choices. I've giving this thing legal right access to myself, this coffee. Judge not, guys and gals. I still enjoy coffee.
Right. So I went through IFI, which was an 18-month faith-based initiative program, pretty much like a year of seminary, and then treatment on top of it. And that was the best thing I ever did. It was hard. It was strict. There's still off things, but it was the next transitional piece that I needed. So I get out. I'm, not perfect. I fall off here and there, but the targeting still exists. The people, those things, and it's like, okay, sober-minded, I see the same paranoia type things, but I understand it because this is a small area I'm from. So I am friends with, I was raised with these people that were within it. And there is, and it's not even, there's nothing, I'm not saying that there is something genuinely bad about them. We are all conditions of our environment and our information.
And our traumas.
And traumas. So we really are. So we could be in the same place any other person was if we had the same input. That's possible.
Yep.
So that helped me a lot. So I don't say that to condemn or try exposing people, like the specific things. That's not the important part. It's just seeing this foundation.
This is what shaped
structure.
you of where we're getting to, what path you're on.
Yeah. And so I just, I kind of lost it there. Okay, so I got out, the same targeting was there, but I understood, I saw a different aspect of it from that drug realm that I started in, and being in this small area and knowing the people, knowing the thing, it gave me a different insight. So I'm going and I'm just functioning through it and processing, trying to do life, not perfect, but I start noticing how this influence is trying to project my output. There is this thing trying to influence my output. And Eventually, it went from the watching and orchestrating to actively gaslighting and trying to create the trauma triggers, because that's what it is. It's creating these triggers that we will react.
A good interjection at this point is to basically talk about something called targeted individuals, that there are whole swaths of private companies that are contracted to basically target certain individuals to do the gaslighting, to get the reactionary, to kind of help steer the course in a malicious way. And in the grand scheme, I have absolutely no idea what the entire reason is for this, like why this is even a reality. But the reality is, it is a reality.
It's just trauma-based mind control.
Yeah, I know a large extent of individuals who are targeted individuals that literally just the most ridiculous shit happens to them, that it's like, this isn't even possible to happen in a normal world unless something is happening. So anybody that wants to go out and look up the targeted individuals, these stories are real all over the place.
The main part of targeting is that they're experimenting with directed energy weapons, and we're talking about microwave weapons, we're talking about voice-to-skull technology, remote neural monitoring, voice of God technology.
Okay.
So these people literally get burned by these microwave weapons. They get auditory sounds in their voice, in their head.
Well, yeah, and I'll bridge that gap from the targeting to the Morgellons.
Yep. If you couldn't hear Candy, basically what happens is with a lot of this targeting is directed energy weapons to be able to do behavioral control modification. They're testing gaslighting techniques, their voice-to-skull technology, voice of God, hallucinations auditorily and visually. These are very real things. These technologies have been around for quite a while. But the problem is your normal person who's not under the stress, they don't really work nearly as well unless you've got somebody who's in these very reactive emotional states. That's when these weapons are able to work much better, because a normal whole conscious person, the energy weapons don't penetrate their consciousness the same way as if you get somebody who's really stressed out, who's scatterbrained, who's all over the place, who isn't centered and grounded. Then these weapons work much better than somebody who is grounded, paying attention, focused. Those don't really affect you.
You're not reacting.
You're not reacting, so it doesn't do any good. So then after a while too, if you're non-reactive, it basically stops, because they're like, well, we're wasting our time that we could be targeting somebody who's going to react.
Yep, which is a perfect mirror to Morgellons for me. But I'll get to that part, because I feel like it really mirrors Morgellons. When the people overly pay attention to it and get caught in all the wrong details, sometimes it feeds it and gives it power.
Yeah,
the deluge feeds off of the energy. Everything feeds off of what we put into it. So for me, it was a balance of not feeding the negative and looking outside of some of the details and on the full spectrum things. So it helps having the information, the details, but then look back. Once you have the whole picture, try to find just wide spectrum things that cover a lot of the...
Oh, yeah, side notes, people, if you've been guided to this video, this will probably resonate with you. Of, what was it, a couple, maybe 3 years ago, Facebook tested this crazy algorithm that they wanted to make people depressed, and they ended up causing like 500 suicides or something by altering people's news feed, so it was always depressing as part of a behavioral modification experiment that... Understand too, like if you were in this Morgellons aspect, because Morgellons has this huge emotional component to it, it's very simple to alter the algorithms for your Facebook newsfeed, so it's depressing, angry, violent, because the Morgellons feeds off of this. The sickness feeds off of this. The lower energy, the negative emotions. There isn't really a positive or negative emotion. They're all encompassing in our consciousness. But when you're in that mind state all the time, it wears on you. So that's part of the gaslighting thing, is they can send basically like the cop block videos or something of where the police officers and the argumenting just to get people all heated up and angry, to get them reactive to law enforcement and other stuff.
Which parallels what they're doing in the media.
Yep, and I had that happen to me for a long time. There was a bunch of this like cop block stuff would come up, and I remember I was out drinking at a bar, and this random stranger was there that night. He was just like asking me all these questions, and I'm happy-go-lucky drunk. I'm just like, whatever, I can shit, I'm out drinking, I'm having fun, I don't care. And so he brought up the strangest question. He's like, oh man, I bet you just hate cops, don't you? And I looked at him like, no, actually, I don't hate cops at all. I'd be like, I feel bad for them. Their job sucks. People have gone down and lost their fucking minds these days. Right. And that was kind of the end of that, but it was so strange that it clicked to me that it was like, well, why would I be seeing all these like videos all over my Facebook all the time, like steering me in a direction for a long time, and then have this random stranger at a bar be like, I bet you hate cops, don't you? And I was just like, I was so taken aback. And it just went, oh.
And that's what I learned through that experience through the drug realm and that piece was that something was trying to force me to align with something. It was trying to condition me. It was trying to set a path that I would walk.
Yeah.
And then I would see it come full circle and try to test how well I was aligned with that. Exactly what you're saying. You know, it's like, okay, here's this map. Here's this program. Will you run the program that's laid before you? We're going to test that program.
Are you going to are you going to react? And then when they come do the test, and when I looked at it, it was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't hate police at all. Like, God bless them, and I pray for them because they put up with some stupid shit because people have lost their minds these days. And it just, all of a sudden after that day, never saw it in my Facebook newsfeed again. Like, it just went, it was gone. It was so funny, and I didn't even click all of it together so much until I was telling the story, and I'm like, oh yeah. And so this Morgellons component is, you got to understand of how much emotional, mental manipulation and this that goes into this to basically like feed this disease and steer your life path of, because you can go into Montauk targeting of parallel life steering and all of this other stuff that they can guide you down different paths, and for what purpose is usually much bigger than we'd understand at the time. But they can, for lack of a better way, look into different realities and say, this is how we're going to move this person into this reality, steering it, and then feed the Morgellons disease at the same time. Because I remember my Facebook 2 news feed of, well, yeah, I liked a lot of, like half my own doing, but it was for a long period of time when I was in my very depressive state until it was, you know, all of a sudden like a turn to the creator switch. Anybody who, Sacred Frankincense, beautiful tool. I don't advocate for the use of drugs to try and find the creator. Sacred Frankincense, however, is a beautiful way to help connect. It happened, boom, instantly, and then the next day, all of a sudden, my entire Facebook news feed changed, and I've got puppies and kittens and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to see pictures of puppies and kittens. I don't care about this. But I'm like, why is my Facebook news feed so much happier than it used to be? It was really depressing before. What happened? So, of course, you know, that's that mirror as well, that we can attract that because they can even just write the programs that you'll just attract it yourself. Or it can be actively altered, and we'll get into more of my story of microwave targeting and other stuff later. But
Yep. So I guess through the process, eventually, the more direct trauma inputs, the things trying to create those trauma triggers, kept happening more and more. So I didn't see the fullness of it. I didn't quite know if this is something right where I am or if this is everywhere. And so things led me to leave the area I was in Minnesota and go to Colorado. I'm like, okay, fresh start, away from a small area, everybody's still doing drugs, everybody's doing the same things.
I got better things to do with my life.
Area, you know, and I get there and it's great, it's its own struggles, and end up being pretty successful at what I'm doing and get in a good routine, but the targeting didn't stop. The exact same things happened several states away. Little did I know at the time that it's like the head of the New World Order, a heavy-duty occult. So I am there, and I was given Morgellons. That's the important thing for me. I was given Morgellons. There were parasites placed in leaves that they knew I was cleaning up. Everything is a process. See, the enemy manipulates manipulation, and you can call the enemy whatever you want, term it however. It manipulates information. Everything has an input, output. Everything has a code, a computer. Every program has a script.
There's a science to it, basically, that's set up, that's tested all the time and refined. Like, I'd have these giant military planes would be low flying, come over my house, and one contrail would be like a cloudy one, and the other one would be this weird little streamer. And I'm like, what does this jet have 2 different engines on it?
Right.
And, you know, I'd see, like I talked about in some of my earlier videos, the leaves would have these very weird volcanic looking parasite growths coming out of it that I'm like, well, whatever this jackass is doing can't be good. I'm sure it's all part of, you know, the process deal. And it would happen like every 3 days. This plane would super low that I could almost hit it with a slingshot would be flying over with 2 different types of contrails coming out of it. You can find pictures of those online of, you know, airplanes that'll have 2 completely different looking contrails that they can't spray both the mixtures in one because it'll coagulate and mix and it won't work. It has to be in 2 different ones that mix in the air. But that's now we're really getting off topic. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, no, it's important. Just a little thing that it
Tidbits of
triggered.
information for everybody to just.
I would do mobile tire service, and I would go to different job sites all over Colorado, and I started noticing literally a diagonal X, one line of an X in the sky, and it looked like it was directly over where I was going, and I'm talking 30 miles away, and then as I'm getting closer, the second one was there, and when I got to the location I was at, it was directly over where I was going. Coincidence? I've had that happen 1,000 times.
Yeah, and it could even too be that mass groups of people are steered towards this one, that it, rather than saying, oh, we're either one of us or something special and they sprayed just for us, but it also could be, well, we're just going to herd a whole lot of people here for different reasons.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So that's entirely possible. So once again, grain of salt with everything. We say, you believe what you want. We're not trying to tell anybody what is the actual truth. Paint the picture.
Right.
You put it together yourself.
Yep. So I was targeted. I got in this weird negative, FU energy, you can't touch. So it was this negative energy that fed it. It was getting fed, and it was also trying to show its superiority, however you want to word it. But I ended up getting poisoned. I had ADT security. I had deadbolt locks. And I recorded people entering my home on hidden security cameras.
Yep.
And putting things in water, putting things in food, literally putting blood on shower handles. All of a sudden there were mice all over, which I'm sure had some disease or clean up the leaves after, there's this really weird them cleaning the leaf, and then all of a sudden I have this crawling. Well then, so the crawling sensation starts from actual parasites, and so I'm fighting this, going down this path that I'm sure the people in the Morgellons realm understand. Starts with crawling, think parasites, all these things. But at the same time, I also have, whether it came from food, water, whatever the means, the parasites, the Lyme, all of a sudden I'm getting the neurotoxins, and my whole body is being weakened, and the neurotoxins cause crawling sensations too. So then the candida causes crawling sensations. Yep. All these things. So my body weakened because of the targeting, makes me more susceptible. And that's what I learned with Morgellons, is a lot of these programs need you weak to be able to run. So it's and that weird parasite neurotoxin thing, how created
they need you in the
trigger.
Reactionary mode, and then the parasites actually steer behavior.
And causes me to view it differently. The Herx reaction, a healing crisis, do something that works, releases more of the same toxins that cause the symptom. I feel worse unless I understand it, and I do it in the right degree, and it makes me think that something is wrong. When the reality is, it's something different. See, we don't always see it right. Perception really, a lot of times our perception is very off. So I got really sick, really, really sick. And this just kept getting worse, more drastic. I tried tons of things, and finally ended up getting closed circuit security camera system where I was. And all of a sudden I started getting better, doing some of the things I was doing. Somewhat, but things started working to a degree.
It's a process, as things go along.
And it was interesting. And then all of a sudden, the power surged, and it blew out my complete system. And all of a sudden, it was so much worse. And it was already the worst thing I've ever experienced. So at that point, I literally set up the security again, got going. At this point, my intestines were completely plugged after that point where it went out. My intestines stopped completely. And every single day, it was worse and worse and worse. I could not see. I had sand coming out of me. I had crystals forming everywhere, fibers coming out of everything. Light hurt. I could feel electricity everywhere. I wouldn't have been able to be near
just
this.
Just the EMF sensitivity of being cool, all the metals in me are just glowing from the EMFs right now.
Yep, every single joint. It felt like knives stabbing me everywhere. It felt like burning under my skin. And there was directed energy afterwards during this process that enhanced this whole process,
one of those stories that I've got of, I had ridiculous levels of microwave targeting for a while, that I would be sitting, and it happened for years, and I never put two and two together of what it was. I'd just be standing there or sitting, I've mentioned the story a few times. I'd be sitting with my wife just watching some chick flick, being like, fine, I'll be the good husband and sit through this shit for you. But, whatever, it was what it was. She only asked like an hour of my time. So I'm like, fine, we can do what you would like for this hour. It's okay. Right. And I'd be sitting there watching this chick flick, and I would just be overcome with just this pure rage out of nowhere. And it wasn't just because I was mad that I was watching a chick flick. It was like, I am so angry and I can't understand. Like, what would cause this? And so there'd be other times too that I'd be just in my house in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I'd tell my wife, I'm like, God, my nuts just hurt right now. I'm like, my nuts just sting. So time went on a little bit of these things happening, and I saw somebody talked about microwave targeting. I'm like, well, you know what? This sounds a little ridiculous, but let's entertain the idea. Let's just see where it goes and say, I'm going to be open about it. And I got this EMF detector on my phone, because your phone has basically, when it says how much cell signal you have, it has basically a microwave detector in it to say, here's how much of the signal is coming in. Right. And you can measure, EMFs all over the place with it. So I went and tested it with my fridge and with magnets, and put another phone by it and put it by a light bulb, and then get it calibrated so there was like a normal level. And as time goes on, my nuts would start hurting. I'd flip the thing on, and all of a sudden, instead of being like the little green level where it normally would be sitting, it'd be needled out in the red, and I'd sit there and look at it, and all of a sudden it'd go doo, and drop down to nothing, and my nuts would stop hurting. I was just like, okay, well, this is very strange, and I'd get headaches and other different things, or I could feel almost like a behavior was like trying to come online, that either rage or paranoia, or just pure straight up insanity of just like, I'm just going to go off.
Activating a program.
Yeah, activating a program, and I turned my phone on, and sure enough, the thing's needled out in the red. And after about 500 times of this happening, I was like, all right, I don't need any more proof. Be like, there is no other explanation that works for this. So I started telling my wife about it at the time, and she's just like, Adam, listen, you've already talked about your military vaccines being lost, and your records just disappearing from all these things, and now you're telling me about this microwave targeting. I'm like, listen, I totally understand where you're coming from, that this sounds wild. And then she started hearing all these other soldiers talking about their vaccine records being just disappearing, and they'd get revaccinated. And she'd come home and she'd be like, listen, I heard another story about this again today. If you're not the only one, she's like, I'm sorry, and I'm like, no, totally, it's fine, because this is a big pill to swallow for me, especially when I was alcoholic at the time and stuff, and kind of coming off of it and doing that. I think I'd quit drinking at this point finally when I started talking about all this stuff. So it made it a little bit easier to swallow when I'm not just a nut job, because my mental stability was not real high for a long time, due to a million reasons. Alcoholism, all the smoking, the coffees, and GMO foods. I'd eat like a pound of gummy worms every 2 or 3 days, and I drink a gallon of Diet Coke. We know that's a neurotoxin, and that destroys your gut health. So I did a lot of things wrong, plus the vaccines, plus so all the beer, which all GMO'd corn syrup filled with Roundup and fluoride. But so finally I started telling her about the microwave targeting. I'm like, hey, Carrie, you got to check this out. Be like, I feel my nuts hurting right now, and I'd turn on the phone and be like, see, this thing's needled out in red, and I'd just watch for a little bit, and all of a sudden it'd go. She's like, well, that could be a million. So I showed her how the thing worked everywhere. I was saying, here's going to set it up. And after about 100 times later, I could call it. I'd be like, I'd pull it. I'd be like, Carrie, no, I'm fine right now. I can totally feel it. And then my nuts would hurt or something, or this would happen. I'm like, Carrie, I'm being hit. And I turn it on. Sure enough, it's needled out in the red. And we'd sit there and watch it and then go, doo. And then finally there came a day that I saw it. I did a Facebook Live video that I was explaining what this targeting was, sitting in one spot, and all of a sudden it went right and shut off. And after that, it quit for me, because I was ready to say, yeah, this sounds insane, but I'm going to offer it. But I've identified it, and we're going to literally publicly show what exactly is happening, because it had you could point to where it was coming from too, you can track the cell towers that you're getting your signal from. I could track where this stuff was coming from and pinpoint. Sometimes, once in a while, it would be a satellite, but normally it would be a cell phone tower. Then I'm like, okay, it's coming straight from the cell phone tower over here.
Mine was never from above. Mine was always vertical. Like, I did the same thing, directional. And weird story, one day all of a sudden a neighbor installed this weird antenna looking thing on the home, and it was pointed a different direction. I could feel the direction it was coming from, and that was when I noticed it there. And then I test it, and then I mention it to somebody else online, or maybe in a public post, which they kind of want you to sound crazy and say these random things. But at the same time, the second I did it, it stopped. It went away, and I go out and look, and the entire antenna on the roof was completely turned a different direction. Tell me that isn't weird.
So,
you know?
and what ended up happening after I went through this and it quit with me, all of a sudden my wife would be driving to work, and she was pregnant at the time, a bunch of mercury fillings, we're going to put these things together. In a little bit, we're going to string them. And so my wife would be driving to work, she'd just be like, I've got this horrible headache. And she never gets headaches. And just being like, well, where is this coming from? So we'd install a little meter on her phone, and sure enough, when she'd get a headache, well, sure enough, the thing's needled out in the red. Well, time goes on a little bit with this. Well, she's pregnant at the time. Well, when you get hit with these microwave targeting, your mercury fillings, what do? They blast mercury everywhere. Yes. And so now what it became was my pregnant wife being hit with this microwave targeting is dumping a bunch of mercury into her system that the fetus is picking up, because it's like a magnet for these metals, because we both have started talking about vaccines and speaking out about it and talking about the geoengineering and all these other things. So what better way to take me out of the equation if you couldn't directly hit me, poison the shit out of my son, in the womb from the microwave targeting the mercury fillings, so that he comes out with all these neurological disorders and is autistic. That this is one of the ways that these things basically, how they take different people out of the game of, we've got the whole family courts and everything that are used to whisk kids away into the foster care system and all this. But long story short, this is just kind of wrapping up my different stuff. But unless we've got anything that's more relevant to it, we can basically say target individuals, fun topic. Let's just keep rolling on with this here now.
Right. So the really sick part started getting better. That was all great, but then it kept getting worse, and pretty much every single day, it was the worst feeling I could describe. It was living hell.
Oh yeah, it just hurts. You're just like, I feel like it's just pure shit today.
I couldn't sit still, I couldn't move, I couldn't lay down, I couldn't eat. For 30 days, a month, it got to the point where I couldn't drink water because my stomach was so perforated and it hurt so bad. I could take a sip, I was so thirsty, and everything hurt so bad. I would take a sip, and it hurt so bad. I couldn't take more supplements even, or try doing stuff at this point, because there is nothing. I should have been in the hospital, but I refused because I knew that I would have guaranteed death, So finally one day, after I would pass out for 15 minutes from exhaustion and wake up feeling worse than I felt again, every single time. And so I had been praying for death for about a week. I'm praying, like, God, just let me die. God, just let me die. And finally, one day, I woke up feeling the worst that I had ever felt. And that was every day. And I said, okay, God, I said, you know what? I know that you are real and literal. I know that there is a different force above and beyond me. I've seen miracles in my life. I've seen the handprint, the fingerprint of God in my life in many ways. And I said, I know that my death is not your will. You're the God of life. Yep. And I said, so I'm sorry I prayed that. Yeah, I'm sorry that I have been asking you. I don't feel like that's your will. But I know that you can make me better. I do not want to do this. I haven't been living right with you. I know that you can make me better. That this isn't times of, this isn't like the stuff I would read in the Bible, where it's just like, boom, magic pill and it's gone. I said, but I know that you can make me, I know that you can show me how. And I said, God, I'm asking you, knowing that you can, or I said, and I love you either way, regardless. Yep. And I trust however this plays out. It was this complete surrender. It was this complete death of my
dying while still alive.
My control. Everything. It was that, and it was perfect. And I said, you know what? I said, I love you, trust you, regardless. And I said, but I am asking you, knowing you can, either make me better or let me die. And if you make me better, I will live the rest of my life for you the way I always should have. And instantly when I said it, it felt like waves. The most euphoric thing I could have ever felt, better than any unnatural drug. Waves, and with each wave, it was like it was washing away something. And I didn't quite understand it. And within 10 minutes, 15 minutes, time would change completely in that moment. And I remember I fell asleep, and I woke up, and it was like 6 hours later. But that 6 hours was more sleep than I had gotten in 2 weeks. And this is sober, of course. This is more than I'd gotten in 2 weeks. And I knew when I woke up that I was better, that it just hadn't happened, and that I would be walked through the process. And I feel like there was a degree of spiritual healing through that initial death, that final complete surrender, that brought a degree of spiritual healing, and that the path would be laid out for me. I just had to align with it. Me not being surrendered caused me to not see the path that I had to take. So I went through, and it was a lot of miracles, and there was some natural medicine addressing Lyme, and there was acupuncture, Chinese medicine. So, long story short, within 3 days, my intestines were completely clean and moving, and that's what the acupuncturist focused on. He's like, I'm just going to do this.
We got to
He's
deal
like,
with the biggest problem
Yeah.
first. We
He's like,
can't be
"You-"
dumping more in the
He's
system.
like, I
and
know
stuff.
her. This is like a Christian doctor that specialized in Lyme, and God opened this door. Both people were usually a month out, and the door was opened.
Yep.
It was just amazing. So I went to them both, and within a month of taking the things that she did. And part of it was, there was the Lyme, she understood the biofilm, she understood fungus, she understood the heavy metals, she understood GMO foods, how we're gluten intolerant when we're broken down by these things. So within a month, I felt better. All of this negative stuff was completely gone, for the most part. And I was functioning properly, and it was unbelievable. It was supernatural, to a degree. And so I kept doing this protocol, taking this supplement, and pretty soon I learned that I was sick my whole life. I started getting healthier than I'd ever been.
Yeah, you're like, wait a second.
Within another
Turns out
month.
I've been really sick for a long time and didn't know it.
But how do you know if you've only been
That's
here,
your
you don't
baseline is
know
there.
that the baseline is so much higher, but you have been stuck there. So I had been sick my whole life to some degree, bogged down by whatever the things. And so it was amazing to go through that process. So I started sharing with people with Morgellons, like, oh, I use this. Like, everybody's telling me you don't get better. And I'm like, I use these things. Try this. And people are thinking I'm trying to sell something or they're like, oh, whatever, it'll come back. I was like, okay, whatever. So I start trying to generically make. I know nothing about herbs, natural medicine.
Yep.
I generically try to make these things and started just sending them. That's how I met Candy at a conference, brought the first batch of the potion, and it started the progression of really knowing herbs and nature and as medicine more intricate, and then learning about these other natural means for healing and how everything is energetic, magnetic, the things that hold the state that we're in right now. The most valuable things are energetic, unseen, the hidden magnetic, everything is
Thought
magnetic
forms
and
of many
energy.
times it's our own, like
Right.
us clinging to our own sickness half the time
Yeah.
is what keeps us from getting better of like, well, I don't know what it's like to not be sick anymore. So I subconsciously want to stay sick because then there's the attention-seeking behavior and
Right, and some people, if you are the outcast and say you were given Morgellons or you got whatever the source, I feel like everybody is targeted by the spirit of ignorance, whatever, this adversary, this other piece of perfection that we are capable of being in,
Hasatan.
And through the process of getting better and starting there and learning more and refining it and trying to help others, because I had suffered and I felt deeply when I saw this suffering in other people. So I tried learning, sending stuff. I started learning that some people got a lot better from certain things. I learned how with one person there was a spiritual sickness.
Yep.
With another person there was targeting, something they didn't see that caused them to not see the golden key,
Yep.
the missing piece. And then with others it was just fungal spores. With
Yep.
others, there was military, and they were at an extreme level. There were so many different facets.
Yes, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's spiritual, sometimes it's all of it.
Right.
In my case, I had all of it.
And they
I was
all
like,
have mirrors. They all mirror each other,
Yep.
Sometimes if I'm focusing in the physical and the deepest root is spiritual, I'm going to get minimal results.
Yeah.
So it's isolating that right origin. And through trying to help others, it was the perfect training ground to see many different truths, to get a fuller picture of how things operate.
Yeah, if you want the quickest way to improve your life, start spending your time trying to make other people's lives better.
Right.
You're like, it's better way faster.
Yeah, be the source of what you want. You need friends, be a good friend.
Don't
you
earn-
need love people.
Don't earn a living, be a living, because
Right.
earn is something you put dead people in. Which
Right.
the hacks of the English language, of the way it
Amen.
booby traps us.
Right.
I despise the English language.
Yep. And so through that process, it was hard. It was painful. Not very painful learning that, okay, at the end of the day, what can I do? What can I really do? Okay, I can get completely lost in other people's stuff and never fix myself, which is what Yeshua says. He's like, why are you looking at the speck in their eye? Take care of the plank in yours. So there is the hard part of saying, okay, the better I do every little detail of me, the more I am aligned with perfection, the better output I have in every single degree. That was a hard thing to learn.
Yeah, I'm still unfortunately working on that one.
Oh yeah, I
Being
fail
like-
every day.
And we all
But
do
it's-
every day. Be like, stop worrying about other people's anything, and just fix your own shit first.
But then on the flip side, it's every new revelation, every new important piece and factor. It's like, as I was unselfishly trying to do something for you or any specific person, in trying to help them, be there for them, be an answered prayer, seek information, help in any way with any resource that is at my disposal, I received something that I needed for something else.
It's the law of giving and receiving. Like,
Yeah.
just compensation always. If it's like, when you have a purely heart-based, be like, I'm just giving you stuff because I care.
Yeah,
it literally
sure.
just comes, and that's never what it's about. Like, it can't be about that you're expecting something in return. It's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm literally in a position to give something or help somebody in some way that I'm just doing it just because. Of course, that's always super rewarded, but that's not even the point of why you do it. You're just like, no, I'm literally doing it because I'm in a position to help somebody else. And that other person is me, in a mirror, in a way, shape, or form that's Kabbalistic thinking of literally every one of us is the same person. Buddhist mentality goes into it. Jesus says the same thing too, of each person literally is you. Treat them like that. And the better you can treat yourself, the better you can treat other people.
Yeah, what's the greatest commandment? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. My paraphrase is, care for the needs of others as if they were your own. So that's a huge important piece, is that if we're doing that, I think there couldn't be evil if we all cared for others. That's the thing that's missing in a lot of, some off religions or philosophies. It's, no, every single person is important. I could be that person with the right conditioning.
Yep.
I could be that,
Yeah, that could be me in a million, in a different circumstance. That could literally be me. Anyway,
I'm going to join you here for a
all right, Candy, I'm just going to give Candy my spot. So,
Okay.
Candy, just take my chair.
Okay,
Or
good.
sit back there and hide it.
I just wanted to give a little bit of information on my own personal experience as far as targeting goes. So as I'm sick, I'm experiencing all these different symptoms. I would have what I referred to as a spell, which consisted of severe abdominal cramping. I would have explosive diarrhea. I would experience facial and upper body flushing, which meant everything from here to the top of my head would dilate. All the blood vessels would open up. The blood would come to the surface of my skin. I would pour sweat dripping into my eyes, burning, stinging, and I would feel as if my blood pressure was dropping and I was just about ready to pass out. And instead of passing out, I would experience this huge wave of nausea, and I would start projectile vomiting. Sometimes I had these spells up to 10 times a day. I think 10 was the highest I ever counted. Sometimes it was once a day, but there was never a day that it didn't happen. I was very sick with Morgellons. I was home. I was a hermit. I never left my house. There was a smart meter attached to my house. And so they have the ability to beam these frequencies, so to speak, these frequency weapons from the satellite to the smart meter on your home, into your home. If you're on your smartphone, it can go to you through the smartphone or just through the smart meter. What I didn't know is, I didn't know targeting for years. I thought this was the Morgellons that was doing this to my body. I didn't know about the weapon use. So years later, I encounter different people and I start learning more about targeting and gang stalking and this different information. Of course, anybody who knows nothing about this, your first idea is that these people are schizophrenic, they have issues, they're mental, nobody would do this to them. That's not true. And so years after all of this happened to me, I realized, in fact, that I myself was a targeted individual, that I was brutalized with these directed energy weapons. First came the Morgellons, the issues, the skin lesions, the brain fog, the joint pain, the severe fatigue, all of that stuff. And then I started with these spells and being slammed, brutalized, tormented for 4 years of my life with this targeting. And so as I experienced the energy clearing protocol and I was able to, detoxify my body, desensitize myself to foods and vitamins and minerals so that now I'm getting proper nutrition, I became stronger and I became less toxic. I lost a lot of weight and things started to put me back to normal. For 5 years, I was not targeted at all. I had no spells, I had no issues, there was nothing happening to me from a frequency level. I had learned through the clearing process to clear myself for my phone, for my computer, for all of my electronics and things like that. So I did that, and I didn't have any issues. So now we fast forward to 2014 when I went to Arizona and did the conference, and Lisa had her issue, and I saw this unholy thing looking back at me, which we've discussed in the previous videos. And needless to say, it was a very insane experience. But when I returned home from there, I was standing in my front lawn and I was talking on my phone to somebody who had been at the conference with us. And suddenly I said to her, I have to go. And I hung up the phone and I proceeded to projectile vomit right where I stood. Out of nowhere, I felt fine. Within 3 seconds, I have this huge wave of nausea. And I didn't think much of it. I thought, oh, it must have been something I ate. I'm not paying attention. I'm talking on the phone. The following week, I was around the same spot on my front lawn talking to somebody else on the phone. And lo and behold, it happened again. I said, Don, I have to go. I hung up the phone and I vomited again. So I proceeded to call a dear friend of mine who is very adept at targeting and gang stalking. And I said, you know, they're getting me again. They haven't gotten me in 5 years and I don't know how they're doing it. And he said, didn't you tell me you bought a new phone before you went to the conference in Arizona? And I said, I did. He said, did you remember to clear yourself for it? And I had not. And I felt foolish, being that I'm the one who invented the clearing protocol. So I proceeded to clear myself for the phone. I walked right over to the smart meter. I put my hand right on the smart meter, and I proceeded to clear myself for the smart meter. That was 5 years ago in 2014, and I have not been targeted again since. So later in a later video, we're going to discuss the clearing protocol, and I will also reiterate this information in there about how you can use this protocol to desensitize yourself to these frequency weapons. Once your body is detoxified from all of these unnatural particles, the heavy metals, these hybrids and these DARPA mold ice particles and stuff that will start purging from your body after the clearings. Once all of that gets straightened out and then you do the clearing for the energy weapons themselves, you will see the targeting slow down, stop, cease altogether. The burning from the microwave, the burning of the skin that people deal with, the headaches, the terrible symptoms. As I started investigating the targeting topic, the symptoms of diarrhea and flushing and passing out and vomiting are all the symptoms of these targeted weapons, and there's so many more. But these symptoms that I was experiencing myself personally are all involved under that umbrella of the symptoms of these weapons. So it was many years later before I understood that I had in fact been a targeted individual. And I mention this a lot of times in my Morgellons and Open Forum group on Facebook. And I'm trying to get people to understand that I truly believe if you have the symptoms of the Morgellons issue, you are in fact a targeted individual. And I'm not sure if it's because these frequency weapons actually have the ability to activate these nanoparticles within us, and that's why we're having the side effect of we are not incorporating this stuff the way the rest of the world is. People are running around the world, they have these particles inside of them, they don't even know that they're there. They don't have any side effects. The Morgellons people are the people who are the side effect of this experimentation. Something has gone wrong. The majority of the world takes a certain medication, they have no issue. There's 5 people who have an issue. Those 5 people are having side effects of that medication. It's the same thing with the experiment. We are the side effect of that experiment. So I just wanted to come and put my 2 cents in about the targeting as long as we were talking about that issue. Mr. Sweeney is a dear friend of mine. I am so honored and happy that he came to join us here today. Birds of a feather are starting to flock together. Many, many people on a daily basis are asking to join my Morgellons Open Forum, so we know that this information is coming to light. We know people are becoming more aware of it. Oftentimes they come into the forum and there's a lot of information we give to people and it can be very overwhelming. It can be even traumatizing, I would believe, at a certain point. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm talking about certain topics, but the best thing to do is come in and digest it bite by bite and piece by piece. And if anyone has any questions, my name is Candy Griffin Vanderwalker. I am on Facebook. Please feel free to personal message me, ask me any questions. I don't have all the answers, but if I do, I will share them with you. If I don't, and I know somebody who has that answer, I will send you in their direction. So please feel free to contact me. I am an open book, and we are here to drag all of this darkness into the light and expose
what is really happening in our real world here, and try to get people to understand, because people have so many questions. What is happening to me? What is going on? Why do I have this? What is this coming from my skin? And so they're waking up, they're seeking information, they're searching knowledge, and they're finding it because of people like us who are gathering and putting this information together in cohesive and simple explanations for people to understand what is actually happening. So thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to our next video. Thanks, Chris.